A brief message from your friendly neighborhood editing Jordan. We tend to try to keep things pretty PG-13 around here, but this is an improv podcast. So, who knows what we're going to say. Sometimes we throw in some swearing, some sexual content, and some violence. So, as a general warning, viewer discretion is advised. Also to be noted, the opinions stated about a certain tabletop role-playing game are just that, our opinions. We love the game and we like talking about it. So, any criticisms are really just all in good fun. All right, with that out of the way, let's get on with the show.
On this computer. There it is. All right.
I still can't hear the lady, even if you're the one hitting record.
All right. Well, Jordan, are you excited to talk about 4th edition with a guest today?
See, I don't know why you're making me do this, because I'm excited about the guest, but, seriously, we're talking about 4th. Terran's not even here. We don't have to, let him infect the,
I've decided that today in spirit I am going to channel Terran, and so I'm going to be the 4th edition stan on the podcast today.
All I gotta say is that 4E is the best number E sound. 4E sounds better than 5E and 2E. I'd rather say 4E all day of the week.
I will give you that. It is more fun to say. But
I can't believe Jordan broke immediately. She's already agreeing that 4E is good.
Oh, I didn't say that the game was good. I said that the name was good. There's a difference. I will not give Terran the satisfaction.
2E sounds a little Australian to me. I forget what the term is, but they have a very close call that they do to each other. It's very close to 2E.
Yeah, it sounds like something like, oh yeah, man, I'm gonna go down to the 2E. Sounds like a gas station or something.
2E.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Nat One Podcast, aka Nope, because nope, you're not gonna want to hear what we're about to have to say. I'm Pertuset.
I'm Levi.
And I'm Jordan.
All right. So, first off, Nat One Podcast, welcome our guest. Bye-bye.
Woo!
Yes.
Thank you.
Our first guest of the new year in 2023.
That is not part of our immediate friend group. Look, guys, we're reaching out.
So, for the lovely people at home that are listening, would you like to introduce yourself and what you do and everything?
I'm Mitch McDonald. I run a 4th edition podcast, real play podcast, and drug one of our players from 2nd edition, kicking and screaming, and then 2 of my other players are fairly new to Dungeons and Dragons, so I got to help them learn how to play. And one of my newer players actually came from, I think, 3.5. So we've got a little bit of variety in the editions that we've played.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice mixed bag. I mean, I know, at least for us, and then the big names like Critical Role and them, very 5th edition based. So
Yes.
If you were the Jehovah's Witness of 4th edition, what would you say after someone answers your door and about 4th edition?
Here's my thing on editions. I came in to AD&D, and then I played 3.5 briefly, and I came back around into 4th edition because of another podcast that I listened to called Critical Hit. I started listening to them, and after about 6 months of listening to them, I decided, no, I've got to get into D&D again. And so for me, 4th edition is what I know because I listened to a 4th edition podcast for, actually now I've listened to it for probably 5 years. So it just happens to be the system that I fell into and know. Kind of what I do is I pretty much use the rules that work for us, and then things from previous editions that I like, or even 5th edition, I bring that all into the same edition. So I'm not exactly an ambassador for one edition more than any other. I can say that I like that 4th edition doesn't seem to be as easy on the players as 5th edition. Some of the 5th edition monsters I was looking at, I'm like, wow, they took all the bite out of these things,
True, like the
Yeah.
Tarrasque.
Yeah. Well, and then you look back to like AD&D, and your odds of survival in a AD&D campaign was a lot lower than it is in 5th edition.
Meat grinder.
Yeah, it really is. And I think AD&D was a little bit too far on that side. And I think 5th edition has gone too much to the player side and make them too powerful too soon. So I like that 4th edition is kind of a mix. Seems to have a pretty good rule set. There's a few things that I really don't understand why they took out. Called shots, for one.
True. Like, yes.
If I want to take a negative on a hit or a 2-hit, I should be able to do that in order to aim where I'm shooting at or striking at. And so in my game, we still have called shots. No one uses it for the most part, but if they want to, it's there, So yeah, it's an odd thing, but I really am not a ambassador for any given system. I like taking all of the rules of whatever I really like and bringing it back to the one I happen to be playing at the moment, So
yeah, that's very fair. We do something like that too. We like 5th edition is like our base, but we stole the spell save rules from 3.5, right? Where you have the spell level.
Because we hate the 5th edition spell
yes.
save.
The saver suck system. What was it? We tried called shots for a bit. We found, I don't know if it was the called shot rules or if we just found a set of called shot rules online. We tried that for a bit. It wasn't bad. It was interesting. I agree that I think there should be definitely a system in place for calling a shot, like a beholder if you want to attack a certain eye or something, or if you want to describe a monster that has a weak point somewhere, like their arm looks really damaged as soon as you start the fight or something. Like there's definitely a place for called shots. Just gotta find a really good one.
I think they're still in Vivia 3, right?
Yes, in
okay,
our
they still are.
For a little bit of explanation, Pertuset and I are the 2 DMs of our circle, and we alternate campaigns. So right now he's DMing the campaign that we're playing, and I'm a player, and I'm making the sequel to the last campaign we played that I DM'd. And called shots are a rule that I use at my table, but yeah, just like you said, no one uses them, even though they're there. The option's there and readily available, but I think also everyone just kind of forgets they're there.
True. Sometimes there's rule overload, like you're trying to remember your character's kit, and then sometimes it's a little hard to remember the everyone rules pretty much. That can happen.
I will say that us being a group that started in 5e, we've talked about this several times on the podcast, but now you're here, so we'll talk about it again with you. That 5th edition is, I mean, like you said, they pretty much dumbed down everything for 5th edition because the whole point was we want to expand to a wider audience. We want it to be more accessible to people. So they did things like that. They removed called shots because it was seen as something that was like, this is too complicated. People won't get it. But I feel like what a better option for that would have been to do is do something like where the Dungeon Master's Guide at the end of it for 5th edition has this whole set of things where it's like, here's also a bunch of optional things you can do that you don't have to do that you can present to your players, where they could have just carried over several things like that from previous editions that would be useful mechanically for players that do want to dig into the nitty gritty, excuse me, a little bit more. Like that, because I know that myself, at least, and I believe Pertuset and 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 of our players at the table have all talked about before how if it was online accessible, we would switch to a previous edition besides 5th edition. We're kind of
Pathfinder.
Yeah,
Pathfinder.
Where now we've played the game for so long that all of us are comfortable with the rules, and we're like, okay, we don't need to be in beginner mode anymore, which is what we kind of feel like 5th edition is.
It's
now.
The gateway drug.
Well, and for what it does, I mean, my wife and I watch Critical Role. the only problem we have is keeping up with it because every episode is like 4 or 5 hours long. And it's
I'm
a
so
lot
behind.
We're on episode 32 of this season. So, I mean, we're behind a bit, but it definitely drew a lot of people into D&D, and that's great, There's a lot of people who are into it because of also Stranger Things being into it. I've gotten from a couple of people, you play D&D, you mean like what they play on Stranger Things? And I'm just like, kind of. My big bad at the end doesn't die with one hit. Like the first season, the final boss died in one hit. I'm sitting there just twitching, going, it's not a I was gonna say mimic, but that's not it. Minion. It's not a minion. You don't get to just take down the big bad with one hit. That's not right.
True. That's for those min-max builds that say, and I deal 500 damage. Like
Taryn.
Okay, guys, 11 rolled a nat 20. That's the only, like, you have to kill it in one hit for a nat 20. Yeah.
Oh man.
The one scene that really bugged me that they did in the last season of it that's out was they show them playing and they want to be dramatic about it, and they show them throwing the dice across the table and right amongst all the minis and this great set that they have built, and I'm just sitting there twitching. And I told my players, if you ever do that, I will kick you out of my game.
Valid though, like no, I feel that. Don't throw dice at the minis.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it just bugged me so much. But visually, it was exciting, and I understood why they do that. But at the same time, I was, kind of twitching.
Yeah.
As any respectable D&D player should have been.
Yeah, true. I think we did an episode talking about like D&D as it's represented in media. Because like, man, they struggle to do it sometimes, huh?
Stranger Things is not one of the most egregious, but it's bad at times on a lot of things. And Stranger Things. Sometimes Stranger Things also does not do it justice.
I think the three of us at least all know what we think the most egregious one is.
We do?
Which is the Big Bang Theory.
Oh,
yeah, Big Bang Theory D&D is atrocious.
They switch rules every sentence.
Yeah.
But
only the DM rolls dice, guys.
Very excited for the new movie, though. It's definitely not going to explain the system, but honestly, I don't know if a movie or show should ever dive into the systems too hard. But this new movie looks like it's really going to capture that feel and hopefully bring a lot of people in, just like Stranger Things and Critical Role. Very excited for it, honestly.
It looks like it has a similar vibe to The Princess Bride, which makes me very happy.
Yeah. I'm not going in expecting anything amazing, but I think it'll be fun. And that's what I'm signing up for.
I don't know what you're talking about when you say media shouldn't explain rules, Pertuset. I want the Warhammer 40K show to explain how tabletop Warhammer works.
Oh, no.
Right,
to its audience.
8-hour first episode.
Yeah.
To understand this one joke, you need to know that the Warhammer, they only recharge on a 6. No. But that's there. I guess let's get into, why don't you tell us...
Hold on just a second. I'm going to disable my clock so it doesn't continue to do.
Yeah, no problem. The power of editing will come and save the day.
Editing Jordan.
Editing Jordan.
It's been so long since we've had a mention of editing Jordan, I think.
Yes.
It has been, and probably even longer for the viewers.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
It's been however long it's been for us, plus a month for the viewers.
Because this episode should be coming out sometime in March, presumably.
Sorry about that. I knew I had forgotten to do something.
You're all good. The power of editing will save the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as I was getting to, now we're out of that, why don't you tell us, if you don't mind, some of your favorite memories of like the games you've played, whether as a DM or player, anything you want to share. It's really fun, really cool.
Well, here's the thing. I've actually only played as a player maybe twice, and that was when I was a kid. And every game that I've been involved in since then is me gathering people up and bringing them into the game with me. And considering I'm not exactly, don't have a huge amount of friends around me at any given time, it's always been very limited when I can actually play. And the way I got into it was interesting because I think I was like 11, 12. We were on a field trip, and my best friend, while we're on the bus, he's like, "Hey, do you want to play a game?" Okay. Mind you, this is back in the mid 80s. That would have been like 84, 85, somewhere in there. So this is before everyone had a phone in their pocket that they could just play games on, whatever. So the idea of playing a game on the bus, yeah, this is cool. So he pulls out a notepad and starts writing down a bunch of random numbers, and he starts looking at a book and writing things down. And I'm like, all right, well, when are we going to start playing the game? And that was kind of my introduction to it. And then we played, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 sessions and just life. And we kind of moved away from it. And then played a couple of games with my brothers, and neither one of them are nerds. And I've always been a nerd. So they were just like, ugh. They still bring that up wherever I talk about D&D now. They're like, yeah, you made us play a game when we were kids. That's enough of that. But then we, later on, I was able to play with a few different people, but it was always like a couple of people. I always played a character, but it is very difficult to enjoy the game the way you want to when you're also the DM. Because the twist, the turns coming up, and yeah, you try and not let that in, but it's very hard to do. You don't get the full experience of it.
Absolutely.
So coming up here, actually very soon, one of the things that my group has decided to do is on Black Friday, we always have a game day because everyone hates Black Friday that I know. Because I've gone out a few times. The only thing I've come back with is a headache, and I've never gotten a decent deal the whole time.
Yeah.
Urge to Kill rising, That's an old Simpsons reference. For those who get it, they get it, So what we do is we play a game where everyone actually gets together rather than being on Zoom. They come to my house and we all play together on Black Friday. Well, this year, one of my other players decided that he wanted to run a AD&D campaign for us. And so what we are going to be doing is just before Valentine's Day, we're going to run a Bloody Valentine's Day game where it's a second edition module that is very much you're not going to survive it, so don't get it too attached to this character. Give me just a second and I can tell you which module it is.
Mm-hmm. That sounds really exciting, not gonna lie.
That sounds really fun.
The Temple of Elemental Evil
Ooh.
is what he'll be running for us. So I'm like super excited about this because I finally get to be a player in a game. And then about the same time I started talking to you about being on here, there was another post on TikTok, someone saying, hey, I've got a game that I want to run and I need players for it because he does a podcast also. And so I'm going to be a member of the Savage Worlds podcast for the foreseeable future. There's sorry, not Savage World. It's called A Sundered World. It's running Savage Worlds. But it's a side quest kind of thing called Stumpwater Tales. So it's not the main campaign, but it's like a side campaign that they're taking us on. So I'll actually get to be a player on more of a long-term basis rather than just like one session here and there, But as far as what I've DM'd, there's a couple of things that have really kind of stood out as moments that my players have not forgiven me for or forgotten. So our main campaign was going along, and we started it back in 2019. One of my players is a nurse, and 2020 hit, and everything just took a dump on us.
Yep.
So I end up more or less losing this player. Like, it's months between times where we can actually get him committed to a day, right? Because of having to work. So we started recording a set of, it was supposed to be a one-shot, but it ended up being basically a separate campaign in the same world. Now, in this one, we decided basically, I run them out on different missions every session or every 2 sessions and just have fun with it. No big deal. Okay. So they get sent out to take care of some bandits that are about to raid a town. And they're supposed to go out and do a little reconnaissance, see what's going on and report back to the town, stop the nonsense if they can stop it, but if not, get back into town before anything happens. Okay, cool. Pretty basic kind of thing.
Yeah.
They get out to the bandit camp, realize there's, 8, 10 people there, something like that. And they decide to get close into the camp. They end up making noise, get found out. So this big battle ensues. Okay. Pretty typical stuff. Nat ones are an amazing thing for moving a story along sometimes. And so they go through this pretty hefty battle, and it was pretty close. It was touch and go for a while. They go back into the camp because they basically drew everyone out of the camp. They had their fight down on the trail, and then they go back into the camp to raid the camp, see what's there, get all the goodies, that kind of thing. And there's 3 separate tents. In one tent, there's a single treasure chest that is chained up. Now, of course, they're like, ooh, treasure, cool.
Uh-oh.
And they go over, they start trying to open it, and can you guess what it is?
Oh, yeah.
It's a mimic.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Now, I threw that at him because 2 of my players kept mentioning everything was going to be a mimic. It's going to be a mimic. It's going to, okay, you want a mimic, so bad, I'll throw one at you. Cool, no big deal. They get pretty beat up by this one mimic. And mind you, this is after a major fight that they just got done with. They have a battle with this one mimic, and they're like, oh, that was pretty bad. Okay, cool, we won. They go into the other tent. There's 6 treasure chests chained up, same way, lined out along the back of this tent. They went in, and I made it to where they didn't just automatically attack them. Even if the one next to them was being attacked, they had to go to it and start messing with each individual one in order to actually activate the mimic, right? And make him attack it. Okay. I'm like, all right, they can't be that stupid. Okay, they go to the first one, they try and open it. It's a mimic. One of the players went through, and for some reason, he assumed that there was no way there were going to be 6 mimics in a row. And he activated every single one of them. And these 3 players somehow managed to survive 7 mimics and like 8 different bandits and walked away from it. But I'll tell you what, they don't let me live that down. But that was like off the cuff, right? Just as they're in there, they're going back into the camp. That's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna throw a mimic at him, call it good. And the fact that they did that, I was like, no way. I lined up a whole bunch of them. So that was just off the cuff. That wasn't even fully planned out. Now, because of that scene, basically the concept behind that is those bandits were out spreading mimics around to cause problems in town. They were going to take those treasure chests into town and basically set them out into the wild and let whoever comes across them get eaten by these things, right? Because they're wanting to kind of destabilize the town. And so because of that one moment, that choice, later on in the campaign, they actually start to find out why the mimics are there, because to this point, no one had ever seen a mimic in this world. They didn't exist. And so there's a whole story about how mimics are created, that they're not a like natural or anything like that creature. They're actually created by a wizard who is basically going out and capturing people, bringing them back to his lair and turning them into mimics. So there's this whole thing going on with that. So
that is so cool, though.
Love that.
That is the essence of the DM's joy, I think, is doing the off-the-cuff thing that becomes a major plot element. That's beautiful.
Also, moral of the story, never underestimate how stupid your players can be.
Or how stubborn your DM will be.
Again, that's beautiful.
I don't know how that tends to be like the rule of Dungeons and Dragons, but it always is just like the situation will arise where the DM will internally be like, surely they wouldn't do this. Surely they wouldn't do this thing that is obvious. And then the players do it, of course. That
It's intellectual chicken and the players always win.
Yeah.
Win.
Win. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
That reminds me.
So one of the things I actually regretted about, I think it was that particular session, was I decided my wife is playing and she's playing a cleric, and she basically had almost no armor. And I'm not against like home brewing some armor or weapons or fun little knickknacks. I think it's entertaining. I wasn't really thinking about it. I think I was pretty tired at the time when I made this, and I've kind of regretted it because one of the leaders had on armor that was +8, and I hadn't thought about the plus that I added to it. And it's like later I'm going, oh my God, I just gave her like God level armor. And it's come back to bite me a few times because now she's not impossible to hit by any means, but she's as well armored as like the fighter,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot harder to hit her. It's like, well, that was a goof.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
Doesn't sound like anything we would have ever done.
Yeah, Levi, you wouldn't have any experience with immediately regretting giving people items in game, would you?
Oh, I was referring more to Pertuset giving my paladin a +10 shield.
Oh, I was thinking about Finral.
Here I was thinking about the deck of many things and the bonket. Again,
yeah. See, I haven't been so silly as to put a deck of many things in front of my players.
Yeah, who would do that? Who would do something like that?
We had 2 of them.
I've seen what they'll do with boxes that they know are mimics. So it's like, no, we don't need that.
Oh
Who
man.
would do something like that and then after having them do it once in a campaign say, yes, I should do it again in the next campaign.
I can't imagine what kind of twisted individual would have that process of thought.
Certainly made things interesting. Can't deny that.
Yeah.
Oh.
One of the other interesting things about this world is basically, I don't know if I mentioned it, but my podcast is called Paper Dragons Podcast. And in this world, basically there was a big battle between dragons and pretty much everyone else. The Dragonborn and dragons got together, decided they need to rule rather than the humanoids, and so there was a big war, and that happened about 70 years before the point that they're playing at right now. So most of the races, people alive, haven't even seen a dragon. you might see the remains of one, but that's about it. So they basically got into a situation where they need to go find a jewel and bring it back to my brain just left, not a church, but basically same thing, monastery, basically. And they find out that what they're actually looking for isn't a jewel, it's a dragonborn child. And they need to rescue this dragonborn child and bring it back to the monastery to be basically protected, because they're trying to change the amount of damage that was done in this world by getting rid of basically all of the dragons, which is what happened in the war. So it's a very interesting thing where it's like, yeah, we won, but at what cost? Because there were actually a lot of very good dragons and good dragonborn. So they're actually trying to reverse some of the damage that was done during those wars. And we're basically at a point now where I lost 2 of my players in the original campaign. So the campaign kind of stopped. And we basically went into the alternate campaign as being the main thing. And when my new player that came on wanted to be a dragonborn, it's like, okay, cool. She comes in as a dragonborn, is immediately sent back in time by a dragon temple, basically tells her, you need to go help fix this problem before it gets to this point. She doesn't get the choice and basically takes everyone with her that just is trying to help her out, right? So now they're back in time actually trying to solve. They're in the middle of the war, so they're trying to keep the major amount of damage in the final 3 battles. They're trying to prevent that from happening, so they're running around talking to dragons, trying to get everyone to calm down and talk to each other and this kind of thing. So yeah, it's going to be fun. But talking about different editions and everything, I heard about the Dolar, and which are, I don't know if you guys have heard of them, but they're like little sketchy penguin people from space, pretty much. It's a Spelljammer thing. And as soon as I heard about them, I was like, no, those are in my campaign now.
Yeah.
So, they basically just had an encounter with some Doar that were trying to help them out, But yeah, it's been a lot of fun getting back into it and like really getting into a campaign and playing something bigger than just like one session and, hey, go do this thing, now you're done. And you got to come up with something new, So it's been very interesting to have that process, because it's been here in like 2 months, it'll be 4 years we've been playing this game, and it's a very positive thing for all of us. Plus, I was actually able to get the other 2 players back on board to come back and finish out the original campaign, so we can at least get that side of it done, because they were literally in the middle of a battle at the end of the session, and that's when the people didn't come back from it. So it was like, now I have this whole conundrum of how do you, if it was just us playing the game, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it's being recorded for a podcast, and I'm sitting here going, how do I explain that away? All of a sudden, nope, we're following these people over here now, So yeah.
No, that sounds really interesting. First off, we'll probably do like a thing at the end of like, go check this out. But for real though, go check that out. That sounds like a great story.
Yeah.
Sounds really fun. There's another thing I was gonna mention. Oh yeah, who among us is familiar with dealing with a single race that's been almost wiped out to extinction, and then a player immediately says, I want to play as X race?
Certainly not me.
It wasn't a player, excuse you.
True, it was 3.
4 of you.
4. Yeah.
Well, Taryn's playing something that's not
He's
doesn't exist.
adjacent to it.
Yes. I can relate to the Dragonboard incident. My campaign that I'm running, the humans were almost wiped out. I said to them, I told my players, I said, there's like 30 humans in the whole world. And as soon as character creation, 3 people came and were like, I want to play a human, I think.
I called dibs first. I'm the human guy. It's my thing.
You and then on the other 2, I guess.
So one of my players, basically the rules I set forth at the beginning of it was there are no dragons in this world. You can't be a dragonborn. Okay. And pretty much no one has ever even seen a dragon at this point because of the amount of destruction and everything that happened, right? One of my players, he happens to also be the one who went around and poked every single mimic. He came and said, okay, I want to play a gnome, and I was involved in the Dragon Wars.
Amazing.
Were you not listening to the instructions? But
True.
because of that, I was like, all right. And I gave him basically his backstory that he was a pivotal part of the Dragon Wars because his family got wiped out and he was a very irritated little gnome. And gnomes in this world are extremely powerful magicians and creators. And they basically took out most of the dragons. A band of gnomes. And so it was like, all right. And at the end of the wars, he basically realized the destruction he caused, and he turned his back on his god, and his god said, okay, well, you want to turn your back on me? Took him back to level 1, took away all of his skills and everything. So that's how I explained away the 70 years and the fact that he's talking all this stuff, but he's like an extremely low-level character, you know? That was an interesting moment because it was like, well, how do I handle that? All right, well, I'll just make it part of it. And there's also a fun scene where his history is coming back to bite him. And there is a rock that got basically sent by someone to go harass the party. And every time he was on watch by himself, this rock would come down, grab him, pick him up into the sky about 40, 50 feet and just drop him.
I love that.
Yeah.
Smart
and
combat.
that was supposed to happen more than it did. But unfortunately, he was a smart gnome and decided he wasn't going to be on watch anymore after that, you know? But yeah. And then, of course, my power player I have is the one that wants to be fully asleep and then out of bed, in his armor, and out before the gnome hits the ground. It's like, no, hold on. This is 6 seconds. You don't get to act that quick.
True.
But
we hit that all the time with our like paladin and like anyone that wears the armor. It's always like, okay, you get ambushed at night. I get all the armor on in a second. It's like, no.
That's why you just pull a TJ and sleep in your armor.
Take like
There's
exhaustion point or
actually
well,
something.
if you go
like
by the
severe
rules there, yeah, you
debuffs
get
for
the
that,
exhaustion.
I
Yeah.
think TJ knew that, but still he did it.
Oh, such is the way of the armor wearers. I'm a cool dex user. I don't need it. No.
Yeah, wow,
Imagine
you're so cool.
being Marshall and being able to wear armor.
Oh.
I don't have to imagine.
But yeah, I wanted to go back to another thing you mentioned real quick.
Mhm.
This was something we haven't really messed with this much, but it's something I definitely feel like we should talk about, especially like as time goes on with this hobby. You mentioned finding people like on TikTok and finding campaigns there. Levi and I, we just came from a convention where there was a whole room dedicated to people starting up D&D campaigns or TTRPG campaigns. And we're all in early 20s or younger. So we got our group right now, but there's a lot of the community that I feel like we don't think about as much because where we have our group. There's a lot of people that are finding their own groups and stuff online in different ways.
Yeah.
And we don't have that perspective. Can you talk much more about what that's all like, getting into that side of it?
This was a moment for me that was kind of interesting because I'm an artist, and when I get into something, I'm like in it. I'm not just tiptoeing into anything. If I start to do something, I'm just going knee deep into it and I'm just charging ahead, right? So I know that I have a tendency to overextend myself in things. So I was actually trying to be very cautious about getting involved in anything like that I wasn't in control of, mainly because I don't want to overpromise what I can do. And the big thing for me is they said, okay, it's going to be recorded once a month and it's on either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So I'm like, perfect. Those are my days off. I know that I can probably work around most schedules with that. And, I follow a lot of TikTok creators, and I've seen a few situations where people have posted that they were looking for players. And by the time I see it, there's like 700 people saying, yeah, me, pick me.
I've seen those.
This happened to be a situation where I was like second person to comment on this thing. And I was like, yeah, I would be interested in doing it. And it's the game that's going to be playing Savage Worlds. And I was like, yeah, I'm interested in playing, but I've never played Savage Worlds before. And he came back on there, it's not a big deal. It's pretty easy to figure out once you get into it. And kind of started that whole thing. And, 2 days later, whenever I came back and looked at that post again, there's like, I don't know, 50 comments or something, people going, pick me. And I'm like, oh, I got in just at the right time, because that could have been one where I just miss out on something fun. So I don't know how it works too much for other people, but I'd say if you're interested in finding a group, definitely, for me, TikTok is a good place to recommend because it is very interactive, and I'm pretty sure there's people on there who are looking for players, and there's absolutely players that are looking for a DM to run a game. I mean, that's one thing that there's no lack of. So it's a good way to get in touch with a bunch of people. So I was going to talk about Savage Worlds. Have you guys played that before?
We have not.
No, we're very we're babies at other TTRPGs. We have not messed around. We need to mess around with other ones, but we haven't much other than D&D and a little bit of Pathfinder.
And whatever the weird amalgamation we used to play was.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
We do. It was fun.
The before times.
So Savage Worlds is basically like D&D light in a way. There's no D20 in it. Everything that you're doing is you're rolling a specific dice for the amount of like skill that you have in any given thing, a D4, and everything is based on you have to hit a 4 or better in order to succeed, right? So if you're very low or untrained at something, you would roll a D4 and then you might have a negative. If you're untrained, you'd have like a -2, right? So you're hoping you have other skills that help bring that up. And then you also roll what they call a wild dice, which is a D6. So you're rolling two dice at a time. And you've always got that potential of getting a 4 or above, even if you aren't trained in a skill. And then that goes from D4 all the way up to D12. And what I love about this system is it's very much about, instead of like with D&D, you have, are you going to be a fighter? Are you going to be a magic user? Are you going to be a cleric? Or are you going to be, whatever the other stuff that they have, artificer, or whatever areas? You basically have these very defined paths that you're going to be on, right? With Savage Worlds, it's not that at all. You basically come in, you figure out, what do I want to play? You can say, yeah, I want to be a magic user, but it's like you don't have to be solely a magic user, right? You can have skills in like almost anything and still be effective in the game. And it gives you all kinds of things. One of the fun things about it is they also give you what are called edges and hindrances. So your character will have like some things that give them kind of a negative on whatever they're doing. I'll just kind of explain the character that I came up with so that you guys can see what I did with it. So basically my character is a half folk, which is basically a halfling. And he's a magician, but he's a stage magician is his career, right? So he takes his little cart from town to town, and his whole thing is just putting on a good show. And he actually does stage magic rather than using his actual magic that he has. So he's got all these illusions and stuff that he's built, and he uses his real magic to kind of enhance the effect. But it's not like he's saying, well, this disappeared. Well, that's just me making it disappear. He might hide one thing about it that makes it so you can't see the posts right there, whatever it is, right? So he has a rather large gray wolf that travels around with him, and that's his beautiful assistant, and he basically has these different things set up with her, like little routines that they do in order to kind of entertain the crowd. And then it comes up and he puts her in one box and she disappears from there and reappears in another box, all this kind of stuff. But he's an illusionist, but he also has some fighting skill, not a whole lot. What he likes is being underestimated, right? People look at him and go, well, he's just a stage magician. He doesn't know anything. Well, he can do magic. He can do illusions. He can do, they have basically like a fire burst thing that he can do, which is just what it sounds like, 2d6 of damage in a circle of people, So he holds back on that until it's actually necessary, because he's not interested in fighting. He just, he wants to do the stage magic. Well, one of his hindrances are, one, he's very loyal, or he's very heroic. So if someone comes with a sob story of, oh, I'm having this problem, he's going to be the one to run off and go help, whether it makes sense or not. He's also, he's got a thing about ravens, right? Because back in his life, a few different things happened where he was planning on doing something. There were ravens around and everything just went to pot, right? All of a sudden, everything falls apart. And so now he's equated ravens with being spies. So I took the delusional hindrance, and no one believes him, but he's like, yeah, every time there's ravens around, there's spies. I don't know who it's for, but there's these ravens around, and they everything goes bad. Don't talk around the ravens, right? So that gives him like this kind of issue that role play wise can really kind of screw with the scene whenever they're trying to do their planning or whatever. It's one of those things where I'm going to be looking around, looking for any kind of birds or ravens or anything like that. And then what was my other one I did? The other one I chose was called Habit. And his habit is basically being extremely obnoxious, talking about what he's going to do for the next show, how he's going to improve it, right? So they'll be talking about something. He's just going to go off on a tangent about, no, I figured out what I can do. I can do this. I can put a mirror here, and it'll make it just so that he can kind of show he's not fully hinged, but, overall, he's just out there wanting to have a good time, put together a good show. And then because of taking hindrances, that's what gives you the edges, which are the benefits that you get that help you do whatever you want to do better, So I basically went through and looked at it and I was like, all right, this is what I want to do. I want to give him some ability to help in a fight, but I don't want to make him overpowerful. And for the most part, the wolf is not going to be about helping in a fight. The wolf is going to be his transport for getting out of a fight, if he can, It may attack if it needs to, but that's going to be kind of reserved because that's not their normal shtick. So it's like, no, the wolf is wanting to stay out of it as well, but not above protecting. So it's that kind of stuff. Basically, you create a character and then you choose all the stuff that builds that character rather than going, okay, I'm going to play a fighter and this is the very specific and lined out things I can do. So
yeah, I like that system from the way you've described it. Like, this addresses a problem, a couple of problems that I have with like how it works in D&D, and I'm sure that I think we sort of share amongst us all.
Yeah.
First off, the problem of like people, there will be like I played a rogue in the last campaign I was a player in, and in 5th edition rogues are supposed to have a lot of expertise and skills, but I was constantly being outshined anyway by the bard, who also had expertise and skills, but also access to 9th level magic. So they could fly whenever they wanted or go invisible whenever they wanted. I could persuade about as well as they could, and that's it.
I had the same experience with the same bard of like my cleric being maxed out on wisdom and all this stuff and having observant and everything, and the bard's passive insight and perception were still higher than mine.
Yeah, so a system that enforces benefits and cons that are like direct like that, with those edges and the hindrances, that sounds like that would help deal with the problem that we encountered personally in 5th edition for sure. But that sounds really cool. Definitely have to check that out.
Absolutely.
I actually remembered about halfway through you explaining that we did half lie earlier. Pertuset didn't lie, but when he said we haven't touched other TTRPGs, I thought about it while you were talking because I was thinking this sounds extremely familiar to this other one that just me alone, have played. I've played Monster of the Week.
Yes.
Which is a sort of like an episodic style. Literally what it's supposed to be is it's supposed to be every session that you play is kind of like a Scooby-Doo style. There's this monster that's terrorizing people. You go stop the monster. And every session takes place over like a week, so that's why it's called Monster of the Week. But in that, it's very similar, where it's like the entire system is based around a D6 instead of a D20, and there are all of these different classes, but you're allowed to take any point from any class that you want when you get a skill point in the game. So for instance, my character that I was playing was I was basically Navi from The Legend of Zelda because the whole premise was video games had busted out into the real world. So I was this helper fairy character. But then I also took some stuff from the occult, which made me like see ghost visions and things, and I wielded a giant greatsword because I took that from I think it was like the Chosen One class. So yeah, I had this thing where like at the start of every session, I rolled dice because I had occultic whispers in my head that made me either have big debuffs or big buffs for the rest of the session. And I had a giant greatsword, even though I was a tiny little fairy. Which is very enjoyable when you can cross all of those things over like that, besides just the part of having hindrances to enforce those things amongst different player styles. At the same time, mixing all of those things together can really broaden what any player wants to do and allow them to be as creative as they want.
Yeah, make something real special.
I will also raise you Konosuba.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Well, we're nearing somewhat the end of our time here. It's been, I think the moral of this, if nothing else, other than check out all this stuff because all of it sounds really cool.
Yes, go check out
Yes.
Paper Dragons.
But other than that, also check out other TTRPG systems. To
True.
all of us, that goes to me as well. I'm beginning with the man in the mirror, as Mr. Jackson once told me. We need to check out our different systems. You all should check out different systems. You'll find cool stuff like this. But Mitch, if you'd like to plug the stuff for people to find you and check your stuff out as we go out.
Yeah, actually, I kind of want to hit on that for just a second.
Oh,
if
yeah,
you guys
sure.
want to learn about different systems, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, I don't want to be trapped in my head with myself. And I used to drive like probably 6 hours a day at least for my job. I can't be stuck with my own brain for that long. That's not going to be healthy for anyone, you know. I started listening to podcasts. That's where I got back into D&D. There are podcasts out there that focus on any given system, right? So if you guys are looking to get into a system, go find a podcast about it, real play. That way you can hear how it actually runs and get familiar with it. That way you can be more familiar and decide, does this sound like something I want to do or not? It really is a good way of getting familiar with it. That's what I'm doing right now for Savage Worlds. But if you want to find my stuff, it's Paper Dragons Podcast. We're on all of the major podcast systems. We don't do YouTube or any of those yet. That would be more expertise in technology that I'm willing to put in, you know. Sound and audio is good enough for me right now. But you can also contact us at paperdragonspodcast@gmail.com. TikTok, we're Paper Dragons Podcast 13. And the new podcast I'm going to be on will be, it's called A Sundered World. And the specific ones I'll be on are called Stumpwater Tales. So that's going to be the new one. That one's not going to be coming out for a while. We're not starting it until next month. So obviously it'll be a little further down the line. But, you know, I'm really hoping that one's going to go really well. And if you're listening to my current podcast, just kind of push through the early episodes because audio quality sucks. But, you know, we're doing the best we can with the equipment we have and trying to tell a good story. So hopefully you guys will get in there and enjoy that. And we're actually releasing on a regular basis now, too. So that's always a positive thing for people who are trying to listen. So, yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah. And then you guys know us because you're watching this presumably on our channel right now. So
Hopefully you didn't,
Go
hopefully you didn't start
subscribe.
on this one. This
Yeah.
is like our 50-something
True.
episode. So
I know I, for one, am going to be checking out both Paper Dragon stuff and Asunder World stuff because I'm interested in
Absolutely.
how both the systems, 4th edition and the Savage World, I'm very interested. Gonna get my
and-
toes in.
I'll give a shameless plug to, if you want another really good 4th edition podcast, go listen to Critical Hit.
Yeah.
And there's also a podcast called, I think, Savage Worlds that I listen to that's really getting into the nitty gritty of my brain just shut off on me. Sorry.
No, you're good.
That system. There we go.
Mm.
It really gets into that system, and it's an interesting story so far. So there you go.
Yeah. And for all you viewers that are like, that all sounds cool, great. Homework's due next week. Have the report on my desk. No.
Please, we expect it to be in MLA format, please. With
APA.
citations.
APA.
MLA, dude.
It's
I am a
Chicago
psych
style.
major.
No.
Wait, we're talking
major
pizza?
over here.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Mitch. It was great having you. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to have you on again in a future thing, or we can go.
I'll see if I can get my 2nd edition player on here for you guys as well,
Oh, that would
because
be wonderful.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
he has a lot of stories about playing the early editions, and like literally within 5-10 years of when D&D came out. So I mean, he goes way back
Wow.
on it. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
All
look
right.
forward to that. I'm looking forward to that, but viewers,
Hell
you
yeah.
also look forward to that, unless you're watching this in like 2024. But anyway,
Then look back and subscribe.
yeah, I think that's it. That's the end of it. The outro music's playing in the future in my head.
I've been playing us off for like editing Jordan. There's something
Yeah.
goes here.
Okay, and
Hey! We hope you enjoyed the episode you just listened to. If you really like our content, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications on YouTube, and look for us on Spotify. If you'd like to see us continuing to do more fun projects in the future, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can find our page linked in the description above all of our other social media links. And finally, if you'd like to keep up with the zany shenanigans of our lives and check out some more skit-based content and things like that, check us out on Twitter and TikTok, links in the description. And hey, thanks!